Good evening. Now that my mic is on, internet world, hello. We called our meeting to order at 6:44, and all board members are present. A report of action taken on closed session items. There was no action taken. For our Pledge of Allegiance, Dr. Ira, will you please honor us?
Of course. Please stand, everyone. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move to public comment. Do we have any cards?
We do. Oh, it's part of when we do presentations, it's part of that.
Okay.
So no.
Okay, hearing none. We will now open the public hearing for proposed 23-24 annual update to the local control and accountability plan and the 2024 to 2027 LCAP. I'm sorry, that's 646. Right. Do we have any comments? We can do this so at the microphone. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing at 6:46. We now have a presentation. Dr. Jordan?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is our annual meeting in which we've got a lot of presentations in regards to updates on this previous year, but also the direction that we go next year, specifically in the LCAP and in the budget. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Kim, who will tee it up as we begin the LCAP.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jordan, Madam President, and Board of Trustees. We're super excited this year to report out two really important components of the LCAP, which is the annual update, along with our revised or updated 2024 through 2027 Local Control and Accountability Plan. In essence, without taking the steam away from our presenters today, it's our story, and it's going to really represent and unpack all the great things that are happening with and across our school district. It reflects the good actions, the goals, the actions, the metrics, and ultimately the accomplishments that we're aiming for on behalf of our students here in Charter Oak Unified. So we have an incredible team that's worked throughout this, in considering the fact that it's a new revision to our LCAP. We've had multiple directors working across the district, and two tonight are going to be presenting for us, which are, and I'm going to call them up to the podium at this time, Ms. Fairuz Mustafa, our Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment, and Dr. Ivan Ibro, who is our Director of Adult Education and Career Technical Education. And I'm going to turn it over to them to present on the LCAP.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. In addition to Dr. Io and myself, Dr. Kim working on our annual update and our proposed LCAP, Ms. Maria Thompson and Ms. Michelle Lee were also helpers in assisting in writing the proposed LCAP. So I want to share and acknowledge their contributions. So let's start with a reminder of what is the LCAP. The LCAP is a comprehensive three-year plan that serves really as a roadmap for our district's educational goals, priorities, and strategies. I love this second sentence where it says the LCAP provides an opportunity for local educational agencies, aka districts, to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet the needs of their students. So every LCAP is different, and that's the definition from California Department of Ed. Now, as a reminder, these are Charter Oak's 5 pillars for success. Along with these 5 pillars and the state 8 priorities, our LCAP, this is the foundation of our LCAP's goals as well as actions. So I wanted to make sure that we all know it ties back to our 5 pillars. Okay, we're going to go over our annual update of our previous LCAP and kind of closing out our previous LCAP before we go and jump into our next proposed 3-year plan. So measuring the level. Maintain a 4.0. In this past year, LCAP. The ones have been added or because professional development leads to college and career readiness. Okay? In our goals, we have several. Continue to hire highly qualified staff. The metric that we're using is, again, appropriately assigned and fully credentialed teachers. The baseline of our certificated staff, again, will be fully credentialed and appropriately assigned to the classrooms that they teach. And our target for our 3-year outcome is to maintain 100% compliance. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Iro, who will carry us through the rest of our goals.
Thank you. Number 2 remains the same as it did in the previous iteration of our LCAP. We're going to continue to focus on academic achievement, ensuring that all of our students within the district are achieving at high levels, including our subgroups, our unduplicated pupil counts, which are our English language learners, our foster, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged, and making sure that that we're meeting them at their levels and addressing all of their diverse needs. You can see from this slide the action items that are all listed under Goal 2. As Feiruz mentioned, the ones in black are continuing. We're going to continue support for our English language learners. The next 2 that you see there in red are new. What we've decided to do was really hone in on targeting the amount of support that we're giving to our students in the areas of math and English. So utilizing our scores now, we know that it's something that we need to continue to improve on. So we've actually created 2 new action items with a focus directly on math and English. So those are new for the new iteration of the LCAP. We're going to continue to develop our multi-tier system of support, continue supports for our students with disabilities, continue to provide career technical education courses. You could see in red, we're going to continue with the reason why it's in red is intervention specialist was in a different area of the LCAP. We're going to continue that work, but we've moved it over here. So it's a new part of goal number 2. And then lastly, we're going to continue with our AP, IB, and dual enrollment and AVID programs at the school sites. So what you see in this next slide are 3 action items that we pulled out of all those action items that were previously listed. Let's just go through one. If you look at the second one under actions, provide intentional academics instruction and support to improve math achievement. The way in these next 3 years that we know where they're going to meet that metric is by utilizing our CASP results from our standardized testings. Currently, our baseline rate is we have 34.62% of our students meeting or exceeding that standard in proficiency. So what we're hoping is at least in the next 3 years, we're hitting at least that 50% target, if not higher. So based on this is how we're going to know that we've made some progress and some improvement in the area of math. So you could see from the rest what the baseline targets are for those action items as well as the 3-year outcomes. And as you look through the rest of the LCAP, you'll see that throughout, and that's how you'll be able to look at what our focus is and where we are and where we want to be moving forward. As Ms. Mustafa had mentioned, this is an ongoing cycle, so we're going to hope to see steps of improvement every year. Goal number 3 continues to focus on positive climates. This is something this district has strongly been focused on the last 3 years. You've seen that by everything that we've done on campuses with the addition of our gates, the new locking systems, everything that we're doing to support students' mental health and wellness, the addition of Ms. Thompson's whole department. So all of that focuses on goal number 3 on positive climates. And so that will continue for the next 3 years. As you can see from these action items, a lot of them remain the same. Continue to provide mental health services and supports to our students. What we've added to that goal, to that action item, is attendance. One area we know we need to focus on is our attendance rates. Since the pandemic, it's been a challenge for some students to get to school, and so our chronic absenteeism has been higher than pre-pandemic. So it's something that we continue to focus on as a district. So that's been added as a new action item. We'll continue to provide outreach to all of our unduplicated pupils. That's the work that Ms. Thompson's doing through her department, including what's the work that the counselors are doing in the classroom through social emotional learning, and now we're adding the behavior component to it. So that's something new that you'll see in the LCAP as a desired outcome and focus. Parent and community partnerships continue to be a focus, as well as all the extracurricular programs that we offer for our students at all the school sites. And then, of course, lastly, to ensure and maintain school safety for all of our staff and our students. Here's 3 action items that are listed within the LCAP, and you could see here how we're going to measure if we're going in the right direction. So let's just take the last one, ensure school safety. The way we're going to utilize and find out if we're meeting that target is we ask the students, how do you feel when you're on campus? Based on our baseline results, 94% of our students responded that they felt safe when polling grades 7, 9, and 11. So what we hope to see as we continue to give the survey every year is that 100% of our students are feeling safe. And you could see the other 2 action items and their proposed metrics there. And you'll find that for the rest of it if you look through the entire LCAP document as well. Goal number 4 is new to us. So goal number 4 focuses on the equity multiplier. And it's we have 2 schools now that are going to be receiving equity multiplier funds. And they're funds to provide additional funding to high-need schools to close achievement and opportunity gaps. So the purpose of that fund is to assure that the students that need the most help receive it. And the schools that have been identified for us is Arrow Continuation High School and Bridges Community Day School. So the staff at Sunflower Campus plan to utilize these funds to close student achievement gaps, enhance cultural competencies, and support the holistic development of all students through targeted actions, regular monitoring, and community collaboration. So here are 5 action items that the school will utilize the funds to assist with achieving this goal. The schools will actually receive a little under $200,000 this next year, and the focus will be on professional development for the staff, enhance accessibility with online instruction, community engagement, and what that actually means is they want to add additional staff to really focus on the attendance and the family support mechanisms at home, with the idea that if you're able to support the families and the students, that hopefully they'll come to school more, and you take any barriers that they have away. Targeted interventions, as well as any funding to purchase any supply materials and to support all the diverse learner needs that they have at that those campuses. Here's an example of two of the action items within the LCAP and how we're going to measure if they are being successful. So if we look at the first one of targeted interventions, based on all the targeted interventions that we will start to implement at the school sites, we hope to utilize the CAST data to see if they are working. Right now, the baseline results are in English language arts, 15% of the students are meeting or exceeding, and in math, it's 5.88. So you hope to see an increase to at least 25% are meeting, and in math, at least 20%, if not more. Lastly, in the LCAP, the state requires the districts in California report on the local indicators in the LCAP. So what you're seeing here are the 5 measurements that need to be embedded somewhere within the LCAP. So the first 2, basic services and the implementation of state and academic standards, those 2 are found in goal number 1. So you can see that we've met that requirement because we have action items that support those local indicators. Parent engagement and school climate can be found in goal number 3. And then lastly, the access to a broad story of course of study, can be found within goal number 2. So as you can see that we are addressing all of those local indicators and they're embedded throughout the LCAP. So this concludes the presentation of our LCAP. The LCAP serves as a guiding document for our district, driving our efforts to improve student achievement, foster an inclusive environment, and ensure educational equity. Through robust community engagement, transparency, and a commitment to data-driven decision-making, we are empowered to make a meaningful impact on the lives of our students. So with that, We'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for it?
All right, thank you for the presentation.
Of course.
Something that I'm interested in focusing on is the absenteeism rates.
Right.
Can you briefly just give us the difference between chronic absenteeism and absenteeism in general?
Sure. The definition of being chronically absent is missing 10% or more of the school year. So we have 180 days in the school year. If a student is absent 18 days or more, they are considered chronically absent. Let's say we're in the first trimester of the school year. We are 60 days in. If that student has missed 6 or more days, they are technically chronically absent.
Okay, I know on the third year outcome, we're at 93.84% for the attendance rate throughout the whole district. Do you have that broken down via, and you probably don't have it now, but I'd like to see it later, school-wide, to see if it's secondary?
We absolutely do. We have it broken down by individual school sites as it's data that we've been looking at all year to really make a push for positive attendance.
Okay, so we can use the intervention specialists, et cetera, and the counselors to target those, and also the subgroups associated with that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Flores?
So just more of a comment. Thank you for the presentation, and I like the information about career tech ed. So just encourage you to continue to utilize ROP. I know we're small but mighty. Several of our students participate in the program, so just continue to lean on them. There's resources there that can help us improve our goals. So thank you for that.
Dr. Arroyo, you mentioned under attendance, you're talking about attendance, right? And you mentioned the word COVID. Is that correct? You mentioned the word COVID related. You struggling with it.
I did.
Yeah, I think that using the word COVID related is no longer an excuse for this problem we're having. It's done. It's over with. That's my opinion. Because a year after COVID, our rate was pretty high. Then this year it dropped in many categories. I'll leave that there. Now, the next 3 years, the 2004 and the 2007, I noticed that the rate to meet expectation is a little higher than the previous LCAP, correct? Yeah, my concern is, before I ask a question, my comments are, did you consult with teachers about the meeting the expectation goals for each categories?
We met with a lot of educational partners, so not just teachers, but parents, our students, community members, our SELPA, special ed. We consult with a lot of educational partners throughout the course of the year.
Okay, not a problem. Thanks for answering the question. The new LCAP, the expectation goal is a little high than the previous one, which is okay. My concern is pushing teachers hard into, and you push teachers to meet that expectation in 3 years. I'm a little wary about this. If the teachers do not receive support from the district's level, even the teaching resources they need to help students reach and help us to reach that goal on the LCAP, especially now in the next subject, we're going to be talking about budget. And I have a lot of questions related about budget. So I just want to know if the new goal is to meet the expectation, are we going to provide resources that the teacher needs to help them reach the goal?
Yes, we are. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in, but we also have our community schools program specialist through our community schools grant to assist with the student needs and reaching out to families and understanding why kids are not coming to school to try to meet that expectation of bringing students back on campus every day.
I'm going to give a little bit different answer on that because I think that's a really good question. I think what we really need to be clear with is that this is a team effort. And when I say that, when you look at our LCAP, especially on our supplemental or our budget with the supplemental and concentration side, we have made, as a school district, a very strong commitment of putting more adults on our campus as a resource and support of our teachers. I think it would be unfair to say that all this falls on the teacher. The teacher needs to make sure that they are able to have kids in their classroom so that they can give their best on the instruction for the teaching and learning. As they just referenced with the community schools grant, as we're out hiring more program specialists, we've now placed counselors on every campus. They each play a role in connecting with kids and the families and working in conjunction with our classroom teachers to make sure that we're all working on that together. So, yeah, I appreciate you asking the question. I just don't want it to make it look like, I don't care, pick any job title, it doesn't fall just on one person.
Right. My concern with that, the old LCAP, the results show that we're not meeting, most of it, we're not meeting expectation. Am I correct?
We
Like
met,
the-
What area?
yeah.
Oh, the attendance rate, chronic absence system, the ELA and math scores, those were not, it dropped. In most of the category would drop. Am I correct?
Well, I don't know if that they've dropped, but you're right. They all play a key role and they all intertwine. So we can't raise math and language arts scores if kids are not physically sitting in a classroom. I've got complete confidence in our teachers that the skill set that they have is that they're very capable of raising student achievement. You cannot raise student achievement if a student is not on a consistent basis sitting in that classroom. So that's why this goal is so high in terms of raising a much higher expectation on attendance rate, because we've got to get kids in class and we've got to cut out the excuse by the families of finding other reasons why we don't come.
Okay. My concern is that, what I mentioned earlier, that we're not, most of the category, we're not meeting expectation from the old LCAP. Now with the new ones, the expectation is a little higher. So this is the old LCAP expectation. And actual documentation show we're below it. We're not meeting the expectation for the 2024, the year 3. Now we have a new one, 3 years. The expectation number goes up. Am I correct? So that means they have to catch up with the old one first, and then moving toward the new goals. Not this huge gap there. I just want to express my concern there. How are we going to get there? First, get through the old goals and then the new goals. That's a huge jump there. And that's my concern. I want to make sure we have the resource to do that.
So I think the resources are in place. We have got a very robust professional development. We've got a lot of curricular resources. I really think that our teachers are appreciating the resources that we're giving them. I would probably remind the board that 2 years ago when we brought the LCAP, and the board gave us direction that you did not like the low bar. So I've pushed on our staff now to raise the bar higher. And that's why you're seeing a much higher number out there. Otherwise, it's really easy. We could say we're going to have a 1% increase, but is that really good for our school district? And I'll let the board weigh in on that.
Okay, the next one, I want to ask about the certificated intervention specialist. Do we have a budget for that for the next 3 years? To keep the certificated intervention specialist for the next 3 years? Do we have a budget for that?
Correct. It's in the budget that's proposed to you tonight. In our supplemental concentration part of our budget, we're targeting so that we can maintain counselors at our school sites. We have intervention specialists to maintain in our school sites. The additional supports through the community schools grant to make sure that we've got our program specialists who are social workers who will be reaching out to work in the community and also provide additional support for kids. So yeah, all that's in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
My last questions. We have five intervention specialists, all in elementary.
Six. 2 of them are at Cedar Grove.
Oh, okay, 6, that's great, good numbers. Now, we don't have a specialist for middle school and high school, not at all. So how are we gonna help the teachers make sure the student shows them classes, be on time, and go out and look for a student who under chronic absenteeism? Is there any way we can have some?
Well, it's a little bit different structure. I think it's understanding the role of the elementary intervention teacher versus the supports that are in place at the middle and high. Matter of fact, Dr. Kim talked a little bit about the middle and the high.
Yeah, the middle and high school a little bit different because there are in courses, and so there's challenges because they have to have required courses that they're taking throughout their middle school years as well as their high school years, especially high school with credit-bearing courses. So in the high schools, intervention is not necessarily applied through an intervention specialist as you would see in an elementary because they can pull those kids out during class time with their specific teacher. In a high school, you can't pull them out of a credit-bearing class to be enrolled in a different class. So we do have some intervention classes in the high school. We have had math intervention classes. It's an additional math class that a student would take in addition to their regular assigned math class. So it's a different way, like Dr. Jordan's pointing out, of how we can support interventions in the schools.
Okay, maybe I was to clarify with that. What I'm saying is other use of having a specialist at the high school and middle school to help administrators, counseling, and teachers.
Remember also at the high school this last year, we started both at Sunflower as well as the high school. Remember the board approved a contract called Just for You, and that's a mentoring program in which they're connecting with our students at the secondary level as well. So that, in addition to, remember, we fully staff now counselors. We've got 4 full-time counselors at the high school where we used to only have 3, plus we have a career tech counselor. We're opening up the wellness center. We just added another program specialist that's a social worker. So could we keep improving at that? Absolutely, right? But I think we also need to make sure that as we add more adults on the campus, we also need to make sure that everyone understands roles and responsibilities so that we're getting the most bang for our buck, if you will, to provide the most support to kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again for the presentation, for all the work putting that together. Appreciate looking at the data. I think I'll start maybe by kind of piggybacking off of one of Mr. Rose's questions. So as we talk about the proposed outcome expectations, we talk about setting a bar high, kind of more just for clarification, is there any kind of penalty, so to speak, for not achieving a particular outcome? No. All right, okay. So in theory, we could set a bar as high as we'd like technically without any kind of, not that I'm saying we need to set it at 100%, you know, that kind of thing, but we're able to have a high bar without some kind of, there's not necessarily an incentive to set a lower bar because you must meet it. Okay, so I just was kind of wanted to clarify that because I agree with keeping a high bar. I want to make sure those expectations are out there. Now, obviously, along with that, it's kind of up to the group, the community, and us involved to kind of come up with creative ways to help support all of that and what we think will make a lot of sense. So probably circle back around. I've got a few things to get to. Okay, next I'll ask about piggybacking off of Mr. Peterson's question on attendance rate. You mentioned you have the data by site and you've been looking at that. So off the top of your head, is that what we're seeing? Is it the issue at the secondary or is that the average actually consistent at each site?
Every site's a little bit different, to be honest. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I will share one of the things that we've done. Like Dr. Jordan said, attendance issue falls on all of us. It doesn't fall on just one person. It doesn't fall on the Department of Student Services, Child Welfare and Attendance. It truly is a push on every single one of us. Every student that comes onto that campus, it comes in contact with how many adults. So one of the things that we actually did this year in our grade level collaboratives with our elementary teachers was per grade level, as we looked at all the data, and they themselves, grade level across the entire district, decided on certain incentives that they would use to entice kids to come, in addition to what culture the principals at the sites were doing in addition to that. So we did find a little bit of an increase at some moment in time, so we're just gonna continue those efforts in hopes that we meet that high mark in our third year outcome.
Okay, because as we look at data in general, I think it's obviously important to identify where the district is at, looking at all these metrics. And I hear a lot of strategy about, okay, what maybe can we add or do extra to try to correct that or improve that or whatever the case may be. But I also want to make sure that we're looking at data and trying to find out, well, are there causes, especially are there any systemic causes that are based on policy, based on current expectations, things like that are actually contributing and causing, in this case, absenteeism, or maybe not meeting certain metrics in math or English or whatever the case may be. Not only identifying what can we do extra, but maybe what do we need to change about what we're already doing, because maybe there's things that we're doing that are causing that. And when I say we, I mean that's a very broad we. It's not about, again, a specific job description or even a specific role. It could be policy, it could be a lot of things, but anything that the district is doing that might contribute to that. So would we say that that's kind of part of the practice? Or do we have ideas of what may be causing absenteeism?
I think with the onboarding of our community program specialist, that is part of the role of what they're being brought in to do, is to look at that root cause analysis and better understand why students are not attending their specific school site, because each one of our school sites will get one of those program specialists on site to help with that.
Okay. Let's see. Next, I was going to ask about in Goal 2, academic achievement. Obviously we have the goals of improving literacy development, focus on reading. When you say focus on reading, is that something that applies at specific grade levels? Is that something that's kind of across the sites? Or what are some examples of what that looks like?
I believe we're going to focus on reading across all the sites. I know there's a strong focus specifically at the elementary, but it's not the only area. But when you look at the data and the CASP scores, it is broken down more into various areas versus at the secondary level, it's just English. It's not, I mean, you can break it down, but it's really in detail more at the elementary sites. But it would be across all sites that would be focusing on that. And the staff is getting much more comfortable at each site, learning how to disaggregate their data and taking a deeper dive into their data, and that's something that's going to be a continued focus within the Ed Services Department.
Early intervention is key.
Right. When it comes to math achievement, I'm curious at the secondary level, there are obviously requirements in how many math courses a student would have to take to graduate. This also kind of ties in a little bit to A through G. There's a certain number of math courses they would have to take to qualify as an A through G completer. So when we look at that, I mean, is that part of a strategy where we'd say, well, perhaps we need to be expecting more math courses taken for students to actually be able to increase their math skills? Are we seeing, data-wise, are we seeing a lot of students that aren't enrolling in enough math classes? I mean, obviously they're enrolling in what's required if they're graduating, but is there more that could be done to improve those math skills simply by saying, well, now we're going to take an extra math class?
Math has always been a challenge for many of our students. I think if you talk to many secondary level students, as a former principal, won't necessarily say that they're going to do the 4 years, right? 3 is the requirement, and 3 is what's required to meet A through G completion rate. But if you look at the data will show that as you get to that 4th year, that number drops as far as the number of students enrolled. So I can't speak for the site specifically if that's going to be a specific focus, but I think what I can say is that all the math teachers within the department will continue to focus on how to increase the number of students that are hitting those proficiency targets so those numbers do increase. But what I can't say necessarily for them, and without speaking for them, of course, is how many, if the focus will also be on increasing the number of students to go into that 4th year of math.
Let me jump in. I think, interestingly, we've had community members question the minimum requirement we have here at Charter Oak Unified, which is 3 years of math. The state requirement, if you look at it, is actually 2 years, and there's a lot of surrounding districts that require just 2 minimally for graduation purposes. So that being said, I think 3 is great. It's minimally required for A to G requirements. They prefer 4. And so when talking with our administration, along with our counselors, I think there's always a push by our counselors to get kids matriculating to get kids to have continuous 4 years of math. Now, not all kids will take calculus BC at the highest level you can imagine their fourth year, but they want continuity so that whatever they touch in their first year post-secondary, whether it's community college or university, there's no break in math instruction. And also tying into the types of potential careers that they have. Not everybody needs to be in Calc BC. If they want to be perhaps a social worker, is it necessary that you have Calc BC? Who knows, right? But if you want to be an engineer, yeah, you probably need to be in some of our most challenging, rigorous STEM type of math courses. So it's a good conversation nonetheless to have.
Thank you. And then I'm also curious how much, this isn't something that's touched in this particular presentation. I think it's kind of more of a broader issue. But when we look at smartphone policies in a district, right, and look at the amount of distraction that they create, I mean, that's well documented that in general, especially for these age groups, that there's a large, kind of neurological incentive for them to utilize those devices, and not necessarily in ways that are in the classroom or related to their academics, right? And so is that something where at some point we look and say, all right, are there changes that can be made? Is there something that can be done in this community to help improve the way that students are engaging with those devices, or modifying how they're engaging with those devices during class time, during school hours, I would say, to make sure that we are, again, trying to remove any barriers to their academic pursuits, that kind of thing.
Remember, every student has a Chromebook in their classroom as well. So when you walk in classrooms, most of the instruction support is working through the Chromebook.
Right.
And we've got Chromebooks all the way from elementary all the way to 12th grade.
And I'm certainly aware we have policies in terms of not allowing the use of smartphones for the most part. I mean, how well that can be enforced, that's always a challenge, right? I mean, someone's going to make their decision on how they want it. A student can make that decision of whether they're going to abide by that or not, or, pay the consequences. But even maybe beyond simply the availability in the classroom, even the availability between classes, for example, right? Things like that, where we look at whether that ends up causing distractions, again, kind of detracting from their engagement with academics throughout the school day, right? It's one thing to be in the class and hopefully not be using a smartphone in that class. Another thing to continuously pull yourself away from your academic engagements or social engagements with peers while you're on campus. Just a general thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, time's up now. I have a couple questions also. The first one is about the A through G completion rate. Have we looked into identifying what the issue was? Similar to what my colleagues have stated, are we seeing a problem with students not enrolling in the courses that would lead them through A through G, or are they starting the classes and then for whatever reason not completing the A through G pathway?
I can jump in on that one. What in our analysis and working with our comprehensive high school site, it's not a matter of enrolling kids in. In fact, programming kids is not the issue. They are pushed to get enrolled, or they are pushed to enroll in the appropriate coursework that's going to minimally meet the A to G requirements. The analysis and challenge is, and this is where we've been trying to address the issues, and the board has been supportive of this, is helping them recover grades. As a reminder, you need to pass an AG-approved course with a minimum of C or higher. And so that D is the big motivating factor for some of our kids. Do they want to retake a course to improve a D? And so our counselors have been meeting with kids to try to push them to say, hey, you need to think about retaking this course. Now, with the board's support and your approval of programs like Edgenuity, which is an online program where we've been really we are in the piloting process this summer. We're looking at, can we find more, I don't know if the right word is convenient, rigorous yet convenient ways for kids to recover some of those grades so that they're not having to take a full semester, if you will, in a brick and mortar course, but taking it in an online format. And yet to be seen, but we're hoping to really look into that and explore that as an option or possible pursuit.
Thank you. And then as a follow-up to that, and also Mr. Rose's comment, when we think about post the high school intervention, have we considered after-school tutoring, maybe a program with college students, so they're more adult, not so much peer tutors, where students who need extra help can get it after school with maybe people in teaching programs?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think with our community schools funds, some of that can be used for after-school ELOP-related types of activities, which is going to help support academic outcomes for kids. So we are in the exploration phase or idea stage with our high school, and we'd be more than happy to talk about how do we enhance that with our students, for our students.
Thank you. And then the CASP score, I see that our baseline is 34.62, meeting or exceeding. Was that based off of this year?
Correct.
Do
So
you, do you know what?
22, 23.
23.
22, 23. Oh, because we don't have this year's
Correct.
scores yet.
Yes.
Got it. And do we know what the prior scores, or was that the year we didn't test?
No, we have the scores. I don't have them off the top of my head. If you look
go
in there.
in your annual update and you go to, I'll tell you what page you'll find it, all 3-year scores. I was there. So it starts on it's on page 5. You could see year 1, year 2, and year 3
Oh, okay.
in the annual update portion of your LCAP document.
I'm trying to figure out if we had an increase from that year to this new baseline.
So you could see in year 1, we had no scores because we did not test that year. And then you could just see the year 2 and then the year 3 outcomes.
Got it, okay. All right, thank you. Let me see if I have any more questions. Oh, the expulsion rate is mentioned as a goal. It was 0, we want to keep it 0, but the metrics that was cited was a suspension rate, and I wanted to ask if those are interchangeable or are they different rates?
I believe we have both as metrics, both expulsion rate as well as suspension rate.
I believe on the presentation, it was just flip-flopped. I think I know what you're talking about in the presentation. I think we flipped the outcomes, yeah. Unintended.
And then my last one, I know that students have to complete the FAFSA to graduate high school. Was that starting this year or is it next school year?
That was a requirement, I believe, started last year.
Last year?
Yes.
Can we add a goal for FAFSA completion? So I would really like to know how many students completed our FAFSA this year, and then continue to track that moving forward.
I believe that can be a metric that we can add, absolutely.
that metric.
Okay. And then I'd like you all to email me and tell me how many did it this year. That's it for me. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Now I'm gonna go back to the absenteeism part. And part of the LCAP is collaboration between partnerships, community, parents, teachers, etc. Now, we have a school resource officer at the high school. Are we using that component for like the SARs and the SART with the kids to encourage them and enhance the parents to get their kids to go to school?
Yeah, they are utilized, and we do the SART and SAR process regularly throughout the year. Whether or not it works is yet to be seen, unfortunately, but our SRO is a part of that process.
And during that process, it's also the district attorney is in there and they can actually use some of the legal laws to get the parents to ensure their kids are there.
That usually occurs once our director of student services gets involved, and then there's a kind of a community creating and more involved.
It's like a last ditch effort. Thank you.
Last questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now open the public hearing for the 2024-2025 proposed budget. 7:35, 7:36. Are there any public comments? If so, please make your way to the podium. Oh, you have a card?
That's the next one.
Oh, that's all. This is the public hearing, public comments.
On the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want to do it with D, we're on C.
okay.
Okay, hearing none, the public hearing is closed at 7:36. I will
proposed budget. That's everything. And I learned a lot in the last presentation. Good, nice, learned a lot. The budget dictates everything a government agency does. At the last meeting, the superintendent, Jeff Jordan, said with vigor and some tenacity about enrollment decline. And that's the enrollment decline and increased costs. So 20 years ago, yes, 20 years, actually 22 years ago, under Dr. Roach, he explained to me, because there was a budget, there was a labor negotiation impasse, an official impasse, and both sides of the aisle were saying things. And Dr. Faye Mason also explained to me the budget, which she wasn't so sure I was grasping it. So she said one thing: you have a K-graph occurring here in terms of expenses and enrollment. And she stood up and just went like this. And that what has occurred. Now, this is the fourth board that is having to deal with this in a real concerning manner. The boards in the past, not y'all, did a minimum. The first going forward was when you initiated district of choice. We've had two public relations firm, VMA and Presidio, and there doesn't seem to be that much progress. As far as enrollment decline, it's a national pandemic. I've learned from National Public Radio this week they've been covering these topics, and you should go to NPR, our marketplace, because they took the business aspect of it and the educational aspect of it, and it was phenomenal. Everything you spoke about, it's everywhere. They were highlighting Kansas, Washington, and Georgia. What some of these schools are doing, what schools always have to do, and they don't realize it, is reinvent themselves and provide other programs and entice parents to say, I need you to go there, and I need you to have a spot at the high school level, so let's get you started at the grade school level. Learning machine technology, the EMT programs, expand on that. Charter Oak was one time the first school district in LA County that brought on the International Baccalaureate program. Is that still here? Okay. It was a gem. I mean, it was the reason why people came here. And if you could use that model in terms of motivation, not just increasing International Baccalaureate, but that as an avenue to bring something in. Because y'all don't remember, these enrollment problems have always been a Charter Oak problem. And it's unfortunate. It's going to get worse just because the demographics has changed. And what I mean is the older age demographic. They're not moving out. And hopefully they keep building new homes so that the younger demographic moves in and they want to send their kids here. It is a business, okay? So you have to get together, go to your local unions and ask them to participate in creating job programs.
Thank you very much. And I'll pass it over to Dr. Jordan for the budget presentation.
Great, thank you. Our next presentation is the proposed budget for 24-25, and so I'll ask Ms. Branford to give us an overview on what that looks like.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Good evening, Board President McGuire, Vice President Peterson, members, staff, and community. It is my pleasure to present to you the 24-25 proposed budget as well as the two subsequent multi-year projections. Also, as part of this public hearing, I will be providing an overview of the required fiscal stabilization plan. I'm pleased to be presenting a positive budget certification, but not without challenges and hard decisions ahead of us. This budget is built on a lot of collaboration and team effort from various groups: executive leadership, cabinet, and the fiscal department. Fiscal department, Antoinette's not here tonight, but that team does all the executing of the decisions we make, so I want to thank them. So each year, districts anxiously await the governor's January and May budgets to be able to project their own budgets, understanding that the outcome is highly dependent on the financial performance of the state's economy. The state budget is not great. However, the government is staying true to keeping districts whole, but at a cost that will ultimately create some issues down the road. So in order for the governor to keep us whole, he will be pretty much depleting the rainy day fund. That's not good for the road ahead if the economy does not make a turnaround this coming year. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and present Charter Oak's fiscal overview. It's not moving. Oops. Okay, so the table of content basically lays out the required forms. I will be doing a general overview of the general fund budget assumptions and projections, the change in the fund balance, funded ADA, multi-year projections, and our other operating funds, as well as ongoing considerations. These are the required forms based on the state's requirement. So usually start with the assumptions. Of course, this is how we're able to build our budget, both on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side. So the statutory COLA for this fiscal year, 23-24, stays at 8.22%. Going into 24-25, we know it's been up and down. So last year, up until the governor's January budget, we were looking at a 3.94%. 7%. So of course, that's going to impact our revenues. Our projected years are 2.93% and 3.08%. Our enrollment, as we were having this conversation just now about enrollment, has pretty much tapered off somewhat. We're not seeing the same decline. And a big part of that is due to our TK expansion. So we still do have declines during, grade levels. However, TK has now brought us up, and we've seen some leveling off of our enrollment. Our unduplicated percent, pretty much, I'm keeping most of our numbers flat. I'm not showing a decline. So I think we're on the mend. Our funded ADA, however, there's some changes there. So if you recall, after the pandemic, we were allowed to maintain the whole armless ADA from 2019. And that's been beneficial to districts, because we're able to use a prior three-year average or the current year, whichever was higher. As you know, we were all declining. And so going into 24-25, that will be the last beneficial year of the hold harmless. So if we don't start growing, we will see major impacts to our revenues because those higher ADAs have now fallen off the calculation. The next set of assumptions are CalSTRS, that's staying flat, so that's a good thing. But CalPERS continue to go up, and further out, it keeps increasing. Not huge, but it still increases. Our lottery numbers have been pretty consistent and been going up, so that's good for districts because all revenues are good for us. This shows the total general fund summary. So this is both the unrestricted and the restricted. So going into next year, our estimated beginning fund balance is $13.9 million. We're still not close, so we will be looking at actuals right after the budget's adopted. Our revenues is projected at $78.8 million, and our expenditures are $84 million. And after our expenditures against our revenues, we are deficit spending $5.2 million, but that's total general fund. Our ending fund balance is projected to be $8.7 million, and below you'll see the breakout of the components. $4.7 million of that belongs to the restricted programs. And after that, you see only a small amount of $1.3 million, which we are designating towards our fiscal stabilization. Our multi-year projection gives us a big picture view. I'm looking at the estimated actuals where we are now and the 3 years out. Our proposed budget and the 2 multi-years, which is a requirement. Our beginning fund balance for 23-24 was at $7.3 million. Based on our estimate right now, we're looking at $6.8 million once we close the books. Hopefully that stays or gets a little bit higher. We never want to go lower. After all our requirements, we're looking at $2.6 million. We have $1.3 million that still belongs to our LCAP or S&C funds. And so total revenues for this current year, we're looking at 8%. Going into the 24-25, we're looking at a beginning balance of 6.8, but our deficit spending is 2.8. Now, looking at the revenue line, you see that we have a lower amount of revenues, and that's all due to the COLA. We have a COLA of 1.07% versus 8% for this year. So we are deficit spending 2.8 million, which further erodes our fund balance to 3.9. When it's all said and done, we have 4.72% in reserves. Our 25, 26, and 27 years, we are just making our 3%, and that's because we now have to plan to do some interfund transfers. And that's utilizing what we call maybe our rainy day fund that was set aside to stabilize the budget. So at this point, we're actually utilizing those funds to be able to reach 3% for the 2 years after. On the restricted side, we pretty much stay in balance. Those programs, those are our categorical programs. So we try to spend our revenues matching expenditures. However, we do have some that we are strategically spending over time. And so by the time we get to 26, 27, we would have used up all our reserves. We also have other operating funds. And we have the adult ed fund, cafeteria fund, the child development fund, our capital facilities fund. And the projections show that all funds will have a positive ending balance, which means the general fund will not be supporting any other funds, which is a good thing. Ongoing consideration. There's a lot of talk about enrollment, but ADA has become an issue. So students are no longer coming to school as they were prior to the pandemic. And I believe our percentage this year is just about 94%, so we are recovering. Last year, we were about 92%, so we're seeing some increase. So clearly what is being done with student services and all the other departments, it is working. Loss of one-time federal pandemic funds. So this year, we're pretty much spent all our ESSER funds. All our pandemic funds will be utilized this year. The economy, uncertainty at the state and federal level. Yes, we saw where the economy was booming, but this year, it's not the same. And so all those things impacts our district's budgets. Ongoing increases in health and welfare benefits. That's something that increases every year. In fact, we just received the CVT numbers for classified, and one of the rates was as high as 12.5%. I believe that was the Kaiser rate. So there's a lot of increases we have no controls over. In fact, we also have additional in the budget this year because of the new law that impacts childhood sexual assault, AB 218. And so I actually increased the budget $750,000 to accommodate increased liability funds that we must pay to our insurance companies. And so, with no fault of ours, we continue to increase our budget. So $750,000 is a huge hit. And other districts, all districts are facing the same increases in their premiums. We also have to consider compensation for staff. Capital facilities needs, we've done a lot of upgrades around the district. And so as facilities age, we have to be able to take care of our facilities and fund all these different, facilities for students. Also, at one point, would show the energy costs. Every year would have increases in our energy costs. And so there are things that are out of our control. But we have to find ways now to figure out how to maximize our revenues and not overspend. Next steps, we'll have the budget adoption next week. We'll also have the LCAP adoption. And again, if the governor's final budget changes significantly, we'll have to do a 45-day revise. We'll have the unaudited actuals to see our true ending fund balance. So we'll have that ready in September. We'll also have the audited financial report, and our first interim will be presented to you in December. That's my presentation. I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Let me open up my notes for a second. I want to have a better understanding of the budget, the proposed budget. There are two categories. One is revenue, another is expenditure. When you do proposed budget, we look in the revenue, what is given to us. And we have no control over it.
Correct.
So when you put that number in, I see a negative at the end of the column, like negative 2% loss here. I'm talking about the actual budget report that you attach with it. I'm talking about the sheet that you're going to submit to LACO. Yeah, but that revenue will show negative and a positive in each categories. You know what I'm talking about with the budget report. At the end of the column, you'll be like certificated, classify, capital outlay, and all that list. Now, when you're talking about revenue, if there's a negative, which means we're not getting, we're getting less money than the previous year.
Are you talking about the actual SACS report budget? Yes. Or,
Yes. Now, when we do the expenditure, I know that there's also negative as well. Would that mean we're proposing cuts in certain categories in order to balance the budgets?
I will need to look at it because I don't have that in front of me.
Okay. I can always state that for the next meeting. I've stated that one. But I want to ask a question. Explain it to us how this occur when we have pay increase for everyone. The last board meeting was done with this, but the pay increase for everyone in the districts. Do you know how much that costs the district? If you have a number in mind, or I can ask you in the next meeting?
Yeah, I can bring that back.
I think that's important. And then the proposed budget was saying that we're going to see in the next 3 years red, and then the third year will be black.
Well, it is black, but it's only because we are transferring enough. Actually, that year we were negative. We did not have enough to cover the reserves. So we didn't have any reserves to cover the deficit. And so we actually had to bring in pretty much all of what we needed in that year.
So I think that goes back to what I talked about last month. As we project in outward years, we have an obligation at this point right now to be able to have a plan on, as of today, how to address the deficit. What isn't embedded in there is the additional work that we start now on finding areas that we can make reductions in, and cutting our expenses, right? If you look at that 26-27 budget is assuming that everything that we're doing today, we're doing the exact same thing 3 years from now. And we know, and that was my point of this last meeting, is we can't continue to maintain all current expenses today, have less revenue in the future. We cannot put the district in a position to have that gap, right? So that's why we are working with, as you guys have mentioned, we're working really well with both of our associations in terms of educating, in terms of brainstorming, and looking at how do we attack that. You look at decline enrollment. What the speaker talked about today isn't anything new to us. It's something that every district has the same conversation. Matter of fact, 600,000 kids a year are leaving California. So that has a direct impact on what goes on with the funding in the state. At the same time, we've got an inequity, if you will, of enrollment at our elementary schools that we've got to address. And that was the whole reason why I brought all this up last time, is I'm trying to set the vision of the things that we've got to put our eye on and work towards the next 5 years to be able so that we can still maintain staff, we can still maintain programs, supports, and not let that deficit keep growing bigger. So I think we're on the same page. We're saying the same thing. And I think also the question that you had earlier about the pluses and minuses, I think I would look at it a little bit differently. That report will distribute whatever the allotment is for the year across all of our budget lines, right? So if we've got $80 million to distribute, then we've got to have $80 million across the budget lines. So we may have consciously made a decision in a particular budget line to put less money there this next year because maybe the data shows that we didn't spend that much in that area the year before. So I don't think you can talk about if something's a plus or a minus that we made a budget cut. What we did was made a conscious decision to allocate money appropriately in our budget strings so that we can provide those support. Yeah.
I know I asked Mr. Bradford a question, he's gonna have an answer. Probably not fair for me to be caught in this, but is there any way I could discuss this with her, have a better idea about the budget, proposed budget? I mean, another time I can meet with her to go over with the budget.
Yeah, why don't you work with Lori and I, and we'll sit down together and we'll meet with Ms. Bradford on that.
Yeah, and then whatever result, you can share the information with the rest of the board, how we
can.
that would be good.
We also, if you've got your questions, get those to us in advance, and we could bring those up next week, because again, I think it's important that the board all understands those same questions with the answers.
I think that would be a good way to do this. Okay.
So why don't you send me a list of what your questions are? We'll work on it with staff, and then we can come back next week and we can present that.
No questions. Thank you very much for your work, and I'm glad to see another positive certification. Yes, many challenges. We'll solve it along the way in the next few years, but glad to continue that trend. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, any questions?
No questions. Thank you very much again.
You're welcome.
You and your team are phenomenal, and we appreciate all the work you put in.
You're welcome.
I have a question that is kind of budget related. When we talk about the formula on how we're funded for ADA, and this might be a Dr. Jordan question, have we considered any advocacy on the state level to maybe get how that formula is calculated changed, since we've noticed statewide an overall decline in daily attendance?
Well, this formula came about to avoid what they call the cliff. So we have a hold harmless from 2019-20 all the way through, I believe, 2021 or 21-22, and it would have expired. And so knowing that districts would have a huge impact, they came with this new formula, the prior 3-year average, which still captured those higher ADA. So it's not going away, but those higher years are now falling off the formula. That's why that will hurt districts if we continue to decline.
So we probably do need some type of state adjustment?
I think to be clear, prior to COVID, you either were funded off of the current higher year or whatever was graded prior. Because of seeing a lot of students leave and not participate, that's where the legislature came in and did this 3-year average piece. So I think what Ms. Bradford's saying is, let's say that 3 years ago, the average was at 5,000, let's say now it's at 4,500. If you use that method of the 3-year average, you're going to get less ADA funding on that simply because your enrollment number average is going down.
Right.
So I'm not sure, when does that go away?
Well, this is the last beneficial year. It's
Right,
not
so-
going away, the formula, but 24-25 would be the last year that we benefit from the higher.
Right,
prior
because
year.
2019 will be gone, so
Yes.
it'll only be COVID years.
But to answer your question, that's something that with our lobbyists, and that's something that, through our CSBA, those are all advocacies that can be used.
And it's something that CSBA is already lobbying for.
Okay,
Yeah.
alrighty. That was all, thank you.
Because technically, essentially what you would want is to not be funded by ADA, period. Maybe something more like enrollment or something in that, along those lines.
That's what I'm getting at, like, how do we get
So
to?
remember, there's been a couple bills that never went through. One of them was to fund a school off of your enrollment and not your daily attendance. The reason why it never went through was that the state legislature felt then that if schools were not accountable or districts weren't accountable for giving kids to school, and if you just gave me money off of 5,000 kids, but 4,000 showed, and there's no incentive for us to get the other 1,000 here, they felt like that there would not be any reason to give you extra money for what goes on. I would argue the fact that the fallacy in the structure is this. If we have 5,000 kids, based off our collective bargaining agreement, based off of our ratios, we're going to staff our
That's right.
schools off of 5,000 kids. Whether 1,000 show up every day or not, we still have the exact same expenses for 5,000, right? So it actually is to the state's benefit to do it the way they do it, because they're gonna give you less money to run the expense that you have to do, and I think that's where the fallacy is.
Well, I would love for us to start trying to
I would love to.
beat that drum in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe call the president.
Right, you guys are funny. Okay. Moving right, thank you so much. Is-
So
oh,
one
there's
more, the
Okay,
fiscal stabilization plan. It's a
Just kidding.
requirement that
Just
I
kidding.
present this. Okay, so this was required of us at the second hearing, and the reason for that is because based on our budget or deficit spending, we're showing that we're now using, as I mentioned before, our one-time reserves. And so the county office wants us to put a plan in place. In fact, they want to be more specific. However, at this point, we're looking more broadly. So for 24-25, those things were actually built into the budget. But for 25-26, some of those things that we're suggesting at this point still need some more collaboration for us to be able to get to the details of the specifics of how we will implement those reductions. So this will be a continuing conversation. It's something that we'll have to do because based on our budget, the 26-27 year does have some issues. And so if we make these reductions now, it will impact those years. So if we start this year, it rolls and it continues to impact. So again, these are our recommendations. We have some certificated reductions. The specifics, we don't have those yet, or classified reductions. And we'll have to come up with more things just based on the fact that our budget is still so low.
I think the piece I might want to add to that I think is really important for the board to understand, that even though you may see something in an out year, what is really critical is whatever you can capture now because of attrition, any reduction, it has 3 times the effect as we move forward. Because remember, if we were to not fill a position today, that is an ongoing impact the next 3 years, which then helps reduce that number in out years. The mistake that school districts will make is they'll put that out as the vision board. They won't do anything different today. They'll keep business as usual. Then the reality sets in when you go to do that 25, 26, or 26, 27 budget. And then what happens is everyone says, oh my gosh, we've got to now reduce this. And how are we going to do that in the next 2 months? That's my point. We do not want to be there. We're better than that. We can look out in the future, work with our partners, and have plans to be able to address that.
The document that's on the screen now, is that what we turn into?
That's what we'll go to Waco.
And when do we have to have details for the 25, 26 reductions?
They will respond with their budget letter and give us more guidance on what
Okay.
they're expecting of us.
So I think it's true also, as we move into this next fiscal year, as we then get our audit actuals, and we do our first interim, we do our second interim, remember, this is an ongoing process of the budget. Things fall out, you're able to use the stabilization plan, you may not need to use all the stabilization plan. Then as we turn those first and second interims into the county, that's where they'll give the guidance saying, all right, now we need more of a specific on how you're gonna handle this. And then that's where we come back and we'll keep working on, how specifically will we reduce any particular expense.
And the reductions from 24, 25, that reduces the reductions from 25, 26? Is that how this works?
No, we actually did those for the 24-25 year.
Look at it this way, if we didn't do anything in 24-25, now it's a $2.9 million deficit.
That's, yeah, that was my question. Yeah, that was my question.
So we took a $3 million problem and we put a
Split it up.
two-year plan in place to be able to address it. With more notably, this proposed budget for you addresses $1 million of it right now.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're in the home stretch. We're gonna get there. Our last quick presentation is actually a new update in which the state is requiring that annually we provide a Prop 28 update. Dr. Kim, just do a quick overview and we'll kick it off and wrap this up.
As the state is prone to do, there's a new requirement for us to report out to this board, but something a really exciting report out, because this is related to our arts and music funding that we've received and all school districts have received. So I'm going to, again, turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Fayrouz Mustafa, to talk about our required Proposition 28 plan and annual update to this board.
I know everybody's tired, so I will make it quick. Madam President, Vice President McGuire, Vice President Peterson, Board of Trustees, and Executive Cabinet. Our plan and first annual update of Proposition 28. What is Prop 28? Prop 28 is also known as the Arts and Music in Schools Funding Guarantee and Accountability Act. It is a law that was approved by the California voters to improve arts and music education in public schools. It allocates 1% of the previous year's K through 12 funding to this cause, focusing on helping schools with many socioeconomically disadvantaged students. 80% of these funds must go to employ certificated or classified staff, and 20% of the funds goes to art supplies, materials, art education experiences or programs like field trips. Our district for this year received a little less than $700,000. These funds go directly to the school sites. The district does not see any of these funds. The highlights of our plan, we are hiring new arts and music teachers, potentially purchasing additional musical instruments, professional development for art and music teachers, support staff for arts and music programs, field trips to art museums, musicals, theaters, and/or concerts, interactive learning platforms for arts and music education, and again, materials and supplies for the visual and performing arts. Our first annual update, at the end of this year, I am happy to report that a number of additional full-time equivalent teachers with the use of our Prop 28 funds, we were able to add 1.2 FTE this past year. We were able to add 17 classified staff members this past year. We didn't hire any teaching aides this year. As a result, we were able to service an additional 1,280 students in VAPA programs this year, with 7 of our schools reaping the benefits of that. That is it. I'm here to answer any questions that you have on Prop 28.
Mr. Peterson?
This is fantastic. The fact that it gets to every student is phenomenal. Just a quick question on the classified personnel, the 17. Are those like the coaches and?
They are.
Okay, so it's not, all right.
We, and the district has never funded those positions, so it's to be able to help the additional support staff that our VAPA teachers hire, who come in and work directly with our kids to give them an experience that most of our kids don't get the opportunity to go out and hire their own personal coach. Here, we're able to be able to provide that to them.
All right, thank you, good job, thank you.
Any other questions?
You may have mentioned this, so I apologize. It's my understanding that a certain percentage of the annual amount is allotted to personnel. Is that
80%.
80%, thank you, thank you. Do we have an idea of what the expected 24-25 amount is?
I don't at this time. I don't know if Ms. Branford has that. I don't
Pretty
know.
much use the same dollar amount, waiting for the state to give us final numbers.
Okay, so depending on the state final Prop $98, then that determines the 1%.
And is that where we make the adjustment at the first interim?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious about with the determination of how the funds are spent. To what degree are VAPA teachers and personnel across the district involved in that planning process?
Great question. When we first received the funds, Dr. Kim and I actually held information sessions with multiple teachers across the district, most of which included our VAPA teachers, and gave us a list of ideas of what they wanted. And we shared that out with the site principals, as the site principals are the ones that are able to create their plan at their school site.
I see.
At the secondary schools, they work directly with their VAPA teachers in designing and allocating their budgets.
Okay. And so I'm curious then, is there collaboration across the sites in terms of the principals and VAPA in terms of kind of like a cohesive direction, or is each site more so operating somewhat singularly?
I will say they do collaborate with our elementary teacher or sites. Not each site has enough money to actually fund one full FTE. So they actually pull their monies together, which is allowed to be able to fund, like this year, their full FTE was an additional music teacher to service all first through third grade teachers.
Excellent, great. And then lastly, we mentioned 7 of our sites, which is excellent. With the Sunflower Campus, I assume that's not included in the 7 sites.
That is correct. They do have funds, but they did not have a plan as to how they want to spend their money, and those funds do carry over for 3 years, so they won't lose the money. They have an opportunity to still spend that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so since the funds carry over for multiple years, does that mean potentially the, kind of the pooling and even saving would occur if there were large purchases, hypothetically? I don't know that anything would be quite that large, but hypothetically, that's something that could be part of a plan, so to speak?
Only 20% of the funds could be used for supplies and materials.
20%, right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question. So the people that we hire have to be new hires? They can't replace someone we already have? Is that accurate? What is the point to new hire? I see 1.2 full-time.
The way that the way that the proposition was written to the voters was to grow and enhance art education in our schools. So you use the term of supplanting, which means that you take new funds and pay for existing things, or you're going to end up doing the supplement, which means that you still maintain what you've always done, and you use this funding to supplement additional things. This requires supplemental.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, no supplanting.
And then with the additional pupils served, 1280, are those the elementary school students in the music program?
It's a combination of the elementary students as well as all the certificate staff, the hands that they, or the students that they service.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move on to board comments. Mr. Rose?
Okay, I'm trying to understand about the budget itself. When I was elected in 2018, the first year, I received a report that we had, the expenditure was more than the revenue. And we dealt with this, with action taken by the board. I can't remember exactly what was taken to balance our budget. But then we're here in 2024, we still had expenditure more than the revenue. We still had expenditure. I mean, that happened every year, if I recall. That we have a budget that our expenditure was more than the revenue. I don't know how we get by this. I really don't. Because it doesn't make sense. First of all, it doesn't make sense that we get by this. Another thing about this is that If I can find it here, I've got to make the list here. How can we say that we can't sustain the budget in the next 2 years, plus the 24-25? First of all, the COLA is 1.7, and that's very small. Then you got declining enrollment, you got loss of revenue in the ADA with the intended daily allowance, which is huge, and a loss of, I don't know how much money from the state. And then at the same time, we give everyone a pay rate last year. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make any sense. That's why it baffled me as a board member, thinking, how do we sustain this budget every year with the loss of revenue in almost every category we could think of, and still we increase the expenditure rate, not only the salary, but all the other expenses. And I even brought up about having our expenditure cut 10%, but Dr. Jordan defending his position, saying not going to happen. I recommend the 10% on our expenditure, other than the classified and certificated. I'm talking about the warranties, and the warranty that we have to approve at the board meeting every month. The warranty that shows millions of dollars we spend each month. I even offered that we could try to cut 10% all of it. Dr. Jordan refused to and is defending it. It's my turn to talk. My turn.
Just for the record.
No. It's my turn to talk, Dr. Jordan. Thank you. My turn. I'm just saying this. I'm just saying that I'm concerned about how we manage this budget every year. I would like to see how we get by this. And then I'd like to know how, I lost my thought about this declining enrollment. Oh, it would be good that we could find a way to increase the ADA, attended daily allowance. Got to find a way to help bring the revenue into our school. I'm not sure, Ms. Bradford, I don't know if you have a dollar figure, how much we actually lost in the ADA for this year.
For this year, it's a little over $1 million. I'd say about $1.3 million.
That's a lot of money. That's $1.3 million. We did not get back. Plus, we lost dollars a previous year as well. That money would never be recovered. You know, I appreciate it when you always say, Mr. Bradford, you're doing a good job there. You're doing a good job. It's not about Mr. Bradford. It is her job to do the budget. It's about us doing the job, finding a way to save our budget. I think in my opinion, we're very fortunate that the stimulus money that came to help us get through the last 2 years, we got by this. I predicted that without the stimulus money, I don't know how the district will survive the budget. With declining enrollment and the loss of ADA funding, I think we're very fortunate to have the stimulus money coming in. Now it's gone. We should go back to square one, then we're going to have a budget crisis, not only this year, but the following year. It's going to be huge. No money coming in. That's it.
Good evening, everyone. I want to give a shout out to two of my favorite people. Tammy Walton, okay, I'm a little biased because you did teach my kids, and Sue Huck, thank you for being here. We know you're on summer break, but thank you for being here. So, and thank you for a great year. And a thank you to all the staff for the great end of the year activities, the awards, the promotions, the graduation. So thank you, everyone. It was nice to celebrate our students and enjoy the festivities. So I wanted to just thank you all, and I hope you have a restful summer. Please get some rest and do something fun. So thank you all. I also wanted to share that I've been on this board since 2015. And since Dr. Jordan and Ms. Bradford joined the team, it's probably the first time that I've had a very clear, comprehensive vision of the budget. So I speak from, being here with the previous administration where the budget wasn't so easy to understand or so transparent. I mean, we do a great job of having meetings, of sharing PowerPoints, of providing information ahead of time to the community. This has been a very transparent process. easier to understand than previous years with previous administration. So I want to thank you, Ms. Bradford, and your team, because it does take a very talented, smart leader like yourself to really make this comprehensive and easy to understand for the layperson that doesn't really do budgets on the daily. So I want to thank you for being honest and ethical and for having integrity, because again, that wasn't always the case. And Dr. Jordan as well, thank you for your leadership and your hard work. And again, I speak from experience, one of the senior board members on the dais. It's been a very clear-cut, transparent process, so thank you. And we do discuss budgets often here, and we are putting in place measures to address the deficits. So I just wanted to share that point, that we are very diligent and we take our fiduciary responsibility very serious on this board, and we are doing everything that we can to ensure that our budget does stay in the black. So I just wanted to clarify that for folks that don't understand or don't see the numbers or the budgets. We do have budget discussions in closed session as well. So we are working diligently to ensure that this district continues to thrive with all the programs that we have. So there are some challenges that we will face, but I'm confident that we will do that together, face it together, and with the united front, and really supporting our staff and our team that continue to work hard. So we know that nothing is taken for granted here, and thank you for your continued leadership, Dr. Jordan and Ms. Bradford. And we understand you have to, work your magic sometimes. You attend meetings, you work with your colleagues. So just again, thank you. It takes a very special person to be in this business. So thank you all. I just wanted to share that. Have a great summer, everyone. Share pictures, please.
Thank you, Dr. Escobar.
Thank you. Certainly like to echo Mrs. Flores' comments on the commencement and end-of-year celebrations that we were able to participate. Always a highlight of the year, I think, not only, of course, for the students themselves who are matriculating forward, but also us as board members, again, to engage with all of those amazing students and everyone that's coming through our district. And really kind of seeing the product of hard work that's accomplished by everyone in this room, plus every classroom, and all the hallways in between at all of our sites. So that's really always exciting. And then with that, also, Godspeed to all the employees that are continuing to work parts of the summer. It's a summer break, but as we know in education, there's not much of a break. There's always more work to be done somewhere. If you pass by a lot of our sites, especially at the high school level, you'll see plenty of activity going on even throughout the summer weeks. So, yeah. And then speaking of a lot of activity, there happens to be a professional DCI drum corps. This is kind of the NFL of marching bands, so to speak, if you can call it that. And there is a group that is using our spaces for rehearsal this past week at the high school. And they're a really top-notch, top-quality group. They are putting on a performance, kind of a preview, this Saturday evening at the high school. So it's something that, hey, if you're available, you happen to be around, I encourage everyone to kind of go check it out if you happen to see what the professional level of marching band looks like. And I believe that's something around 7 o'clock, 7:30. I'll have to double check. But something like that. So, yeah, check it out. I know it's not everyone's bag necessarily, but I think it's going to be super impressive no matter what your experience is with marching band. So, thank you.
Do we know how many hands we shake if we attend all the commencements, the promotion? Do we know how many?
All right, it's good to see the multi-year projection in the black. Districts throughout the state are going through the same process we're going through. And we're very fortunate that we have Dr. Jordan, the cabinet, Corral crunching the numbers to get us to the point where we are at. It's a vision that we all know about, that we've been told over and over again. There's no surprises. We know exactly what's going on, when it's going on, and we vote on it. And we appreciate the transparency that you and your team bring to us, and also what you're doing to try and curtail some of the things that we can control. We can't control the economic issues going on in the state, but we can control things like our solar, working with our associations, working with the city, getting the grants, and doing a variety of things to benefit our students. I'm glad you brought up the the marching band thing, because I was gonna give you a hard time, because I saw those people on there all weekend. I thought it was our kids. And it was like a boot camp, man. Those kids were out there, and it was hot, and they were out there all weekend long. And I was looking for you out there all sweaty, but I didn't see you. But with our VAPA program, we got Beauty and the Beast going on at the middle school. That camp started this week. Looking forward to that. Thank you to the teachers for all the hard work. And we were able to see the fruits of their labor with all the kids promoting, going through, seeing all the families celebrating. That's the best part of it all. So thank you very much. Have an enjoyable summer, and thanks for all the work everyone does.
Thank you. I want to first thank the team for all of those thorough reports today, LCAP, budget, Prop 28. I'm not one of the most senior board members here, but what I can say is my experience from being a parent in the audience versus someone on the board now, I feel like I have more access to information that is understandable than I've ever had before. Also, just from running an organization, I understand how important it is to have a fiscal officer that is of a high moral character and that you can trust. So I want to thank you for that, Ms. Branford, because I know that is a lot of help to Dr. Jordan to be able to trust the numbers you see on the paper and know that they are correct. So I just want to make sure that I say that aloud. I also wanted to say congrats to all of our graduates. I'm approaching the point in my life as a parent where I'm starting to recognize and know the students who are graduating. So next year's my year. So I don't know how I'm going to shake all of those hands and distribute diplomas while crying at the same time. It's going to be very crazy, but I'm looking forward to it. I know I'm going to have to look to Jeanette for advice.
You two on the same side.
Also, and I'll repeat this next time we meet, but we have several students from our high school who are in Assembly Member Rubio's leadership program, and they are all traveling to Sacramento on the 24th and 25th, where she's taking them to visit the state capitol, view her new office, and meet with several legislators up at the state capitol. In fact, last year they had lunch with the lieutenant governor. So this year I think we have 5 Charter Oak students there, and I'll gather all their names for our next meeting, but I'm really excited to see our school on that level of leadership, and she's been documenting the whole process on her Instagram page, Assemblymember Rubio's Instagram page. So you can go look at her page and you'll see familiar faces of our students. And then my celebrations, again, I'm gonna say all of this again next time, but happy Father's Day to all of our fathers and folks who are assisting with fathering. We also celebrate June. I don't know if a lot of folks know this, but it's Immigrant Heritage Month. That's important because we are a country made of a whole lot of different kinds of people. June is also Pride Month. Want to make sure we celebrate that. And then my history lesson, again, that's going to repeat because it's so important to me, is Juneteenth, which is now a federal holiday. So just as a nutshell, American slavery was abolished in 1863 through executive order, but they could not enforce it in the Confederate States. So it took troops having to travel by horse all around the country. And the last place that they got to was Galveston, Texas, and that was in 1865, about 19 months after slavery was abolished, and those Black Americans who were formerly enslaved were freed and allowed to live as partial Americans. We were getting there at the point, but we're there now. So it's a very important day. I'm very happy that it's a federal holiday, and I think that this is a moment for all Americans to celebrate and share the progress we've made in this country. With that, our next board meeting is on June 20th, and we have no need for additional closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Mrs. Flores, is there a second? And a second. Do we vote on this? I forgot already. No, okay, it's closed. The meeting's over. My phone is dead. What time is it?